You're now watching the Danny Mac Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
They say there's no such thing as an ugly win in the NFL. Well, okay, I'm buying that. It was a great defensive effort by the Bears and great special teams. The Bears are 1-0. Thanks for joining me. Post-game reaction. Danny Mac here on the Bet Rivers Podcast Network. The Bears knock off Tennessee 24-17 at Soldier Field today. They do it by scoring 21 unanswered points in the second half. That's right. The Titans led at the break 17-3 because the Bears offense was nowhere, and it was a tough day, and it really never got better for Chicago. The big play of the game, 19 yards late in the ball game. Caleb Williams didn't throw for more than 100 yards. The Bears averaging 2.1 yards per pass. It was underwhelming, to say the least, but who cares? The defense came to play in the second half. They settled down, and they stopped the run after Tony Pollard put the screws to him pretty effectively in the first half. That was a really nice 26-yard touchdown run, very well blocked by Tennessee. But the Titans' offensive line had real issues in the second half. And the Bears defense exposed them. Give credit to Andrew Billings, big number 97. Gervon Dexter, the second-year man, playing much better today. And it seems like out of nowhere, guys emerge and they have great games. And, you know, it wasn't an out-of-nowhere game for TJ Edwards, the local kid who grew up loving Lance Briggs. And it's so perfect because he had a Lance Briggs game. You expect him to be a guy who's always around the ball. That dude, buy him a drink if you see him anytime in the next couple of days. He was all over the field. He was credited with 15 total tackles on the day and a couple of picks, including a pick six from Tyreek Stevenson, the second-year man out of Miami. Just a terrible ball by Will Levis. But let me give credit to Stevenson because he earned it. He started 16 games unexpectedly last year. He wasn't expected to as a fourth-round pick, log a lot of playing time. He came on very strong. Late last year, he was the NFC's Defensive Player of the Week when the Bears beat Atlanta. And there he was today with the pick six, the 43-yard interception return when Will Levis did, what we used to call Farvarian in my house. And that is when you're being pressured and there's nobody around and you want to avoid the sack, you just dump the ball off awkwardly. And what did he do? He tossed the ball right into the hands of the second-year Miami Hurricane and Tyreek Stevenson, who takes it in. And Jalen Johnson, the man who's freshly rewarded with a big contract paying him about $20.5 million per season. Number one in your program, for many, number one in your heart. He makes the pick that seals the ball game. And it was also the magic of special teams that got Matt Eberflus that first win of the year. Cairo Santos has been terrific. He's not going to wind up unseating Robbie Gould as the Bears' best place kicker in franchise history, but Santos has been a real find these last several years. He was money today for the Bears, but they get the double thud, as I like to call it, in the third quarter that set the stage for Jonathan Owens, the husband of Simone Biles, the Olympic gold medal accruing gymnast. He was in Paris for the Olympic Games, as you probably heard, and Owens, a safety. He was with Green Bay last year, originally a Texan. He's got some football left in him. He's going to be here for a few years, I have a feeling. He's a young guy, only in year 5, I think. He scoops up the block. Hardy gets the block, the double thud. And there's Owens to scoop it up and take it in for a touchdown. And that's what you got to do to pick up your team off the canvas when nothing is going well for the Bears offense. And I saw so much criticism of Eberflus at halftime on social media. Look, I'm the first guy to jump on this guy when he has it coming. But that wasn't on him. It wasn't on him. Caleb Williams missed Keenan Allen early on a wheel route when he overthrew him, was a little bit too juiced up as the Bears were going into the north end zone at Soldier Field down their own sideline. He overshot him. Subsequently, Rome Odunze, who was a non-factor today, as pretty much everybody in the Bears uniform offensively was, he had a drop. Then you had a drop from Allen. You had Caleb Williams take more of a sack than he needed to. You never need to take the sack, I guess, but the center did a terrible job. Coleman, Shelton, Coleman. Man, oh man, please, Ryan Bates, get healed up and get healthy. You got to be better than he was today. It was a tough day for the Bears center. Lucas Patrick had a tough couple of years playing center for the Bears. They can't get that right. I think the play was going to be a screen, but still no excuse for the lack of protection for Williams. And he made it worse. He tries to run away, and he winds up getting sacked for a loss of 19. That's not on the coach, man. That is not on the coach when veteran receivers like Allen drop a ball, or the quarterback, the rookie quarterback, is a little too amped up and overshoots Allen on what could have been a big play on the Bears, I think, second series. They went 3 and out on their first several series, as did the Titans. The game started very sloppy. Look, I heard it described this week 1 of the NFL as sloggy the other day. I think my pal Mark Grody from The Score used the word sloggy. And if it's not a word, it ought to be, because you get it. You would attach that word to what you saw today at Soldier Field. It was just an awful day for the offense. And Tennessee, which got it going early via the running game and Tony Pollard, they were nothing special. DeAndre Hopkins, who's not completely healthy, he didn't do much. Calvin Ridley finally had a big play late. I think he caught 3 balls for 50 yards for Ridley on the day. He was no great shakes either. This is how it goes in the NFL in week 1. Week 1, we look forward to it so very much, and it feels like such a big day when our feet hit the floor in the morning. And I even made a big, high-fat, high-calorie breakfast. I made hash browns with onions and diced green peppers and bacon and eggs. But that's what you get in week 1 in the NFL. It's never very special. I was just glad Matt Eberflus, to start the game, didn't take the football. I was glad he deferred, because I want to believe he can learn from his mistakes. I don't trust his judgment on many things. I don't know how bright of a man he is, and I'm not saying that to be mean-spirited. I just don't. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's very sharp, who's very quick, and a guy who doesn't necessarily deal with people all the time very well. Not that he's a bad guy or not a people person. He's a bit of a goof. I don't know if I completely trust him as my CEO of my football team. That's all. He didn't, he let the Packers have an extra possession last year in week 18. You always defer. You always want the ball in the second half. There is never a reason, never a good reason. You cannot justify this. It's like being the home team in baseball and saying, "Now we don't want last at bats." It's the only thing that can guarantee you, and it doesn't guarantee you. It's the only thing that can offer you the opportunity to have one more possession than your opponent, is to take the ball in the second half. If you do that, you have the ball at the end of the second quarter, you're going to have one more possession probably than they will. You can't do it the other way. And on a turnover or even a special teams, those are considered possessions. As little as Jonathan Owens, Simone Biles' man, had the football in his hands today, that counted as a possession. Anytime you have the ball, it's a possession. So you never want your opponent to have another possession than you do. So I can't think of any reason ever to do anything but defer. You always want the ball in the second half, and I was worried when the Bears won the toss today if that's what they were going to do. But the Flus, maybe someone talked to him. Hey, Matt, mathematically, it doesn't make any sense ever to do that, because it doesn't. It doesn't. I posted on Facebook today, this morning, a 6-pack of opinions, as I called it, on this year's Bears. And One of them is overcoming Matt Eberflus. And I think, when I look at what the defense did today, which is why he was an appealing candidate, and rightfully so, in 2022 when the Bears hired him, is because Indianapolis was coming off a year in which they had the best turnover margin in the NFL. That's what makes differences, taking the ball away. You got to do that. I also made a mention that it's frustrating for me from time to time when the Bears' best players, some of them, in some cases, the top two or three for a stretch for a while, weren't very likable. And I don't find Jalen Johnson to be very likable. He's had a handful of transgressions, I guess. He just says things that make me believe he has a higher opinion of himself than he should. And he doesn't strike me as an overwhelmingly team-oriented guy. And I would cite the Raiders game last year when he had 2 interceptions. I think they were the second and third of his career. And instead of celebrating with teammates, he ran to look for the camera in the north end zone at Soldier Field and mugged for the camera. Even after the second interception of Aiden O'Connell, who was throwing the ball somewhere in the vicinity of Jacoby Myers, somewhere within 15 yards of Myers. I would rather see you celebrate with your teammates. And this is not old man yells at sky. Look, I felt this way when I was 17 because I had coaches in my high school football days, and they weren't old men either. They were in their 20s, for crying out loud, who taught sportsmanship. And I believe that you celebrate with teammates instead of mugging for cameras. That's really annoying, and it's off-putting to his teammates, whether they admit to it or not. And what Jalen Johnson said about Caleb Williams bringing his Hollywood act to town. That won't fly here if he's Joe Hollywood. Look, you don't speak for everybody. And he whined over the not being in the top 100 players on NFL Network when they did their survey of players around the league. There's a lot I don't like about this guy, but just catch the ball like he did today and play well in coverage. He also had a very good tackle and run support today, a very aggressive tackle. And that's something I like about this Bears team. One of my 6 opinions is this is the best secondary they've had in my life. They are deep and they're incredibly young, with the exception of Kevin Byard, the veteran they got from Tennessee, the free agent, who I think is 31 or 32 and is in the top 10 in career picks of active players. They're all kids. Terrell Smith is a second-year corner out of Minnesota. They got in the 5th round last year. Stevenson was part of the Ryan Poles deal with Carolina. He was a 4th rounder last year. Brisker and Gordon came in the 2nd round, both of them 2nd rounders, in Ryan Poles' first draft in April of 22. And Jalen Johnson was drafted during the pandemic spring in April of 2020. So they're all very, very young. And that's a real good thing. It's good to be young and deep in the secondary, especially in this pass-happy NFL. There's something I haven't addressed yet that I need to, and it bothers me that I forgot to play this up higher because it's something that has to change, and it has to change soon, and that's Velus Jones. I am all for giving speed extra opportunities because speed is something you just don't coach. And when you have a guy who can run away from people, but he just still cannot hang on to the football. He's not a returner. It made sense to draft him when they did. Poles has been overly loyal to him. I was surprised they were giving him looks at running back during the summer, and he got a few carries today, and he touched the ball again after he fumbled it away. He didn't return again, but he returned to the backfield, and he did get another touch. He's not going to hang on to the football. He certainly can't return. And it's scary the Bears don't have a guy in short yardage who will get his nose dirty and lower his pads and run into the line with some authority. Khalil Herbert had a 3rd and 1 carry. I think this was in the 2nd quarter today. He had a 3rd and 1 carry where he wasn't in a 3-point stance. He was upright, even though there was no fullback. Blasingame was not deployed in front of him. So he had no push, as he was with the hands on the knees and kind of in a more erect, upright position. So he didn't get good explosion. And he's kind of half stepping into the line of scrimmage. The O-line didn't get good push. The center didn't get out of his stance. Nate Davis has been unreliable. You got to do something with him, and I think they did already. Get him out of there. You got to try new guys. And Ryan Poles is going to have to start working and seeing what guys may have been cut recently. Shoebox guys, as Titans radio analyst Dave McGinnis used to say when he was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He told me he had shoebox guys he met at a combine a few years ago who he liked, and he followed their careers. And you keep index cards. Now you do it on a phone. But you keep index cards, Mac would, in his shoebox, and that's how he would go fill up his roster when he needed somebody, someone who impressed once upon a time. Maybe Poles is going to have to do that, because they just, they don't have enough offensive linemen who are making a difference. But Khalil Herbert danced into the line of scrimmage. Travis Homer is not going to be a pounder. DeAndre Swift is not that type of a player. He's a very good receiver. He looks sleek enough to be a receiver. Doesn't he look a little bit like Tyreek Hill almost? Boy, bad day for Tyreek Hill. At least it started that way. Sunday in Miami. Much more on that, I'm sure, in the days ahead and in hours ahead, of course. But they don't have a guy to slam it in there, which bothers me. They don't have a short yardage running back. You're not going to sneak Caleb Williams too often. I don't think that's something you want to do. And man, Will Levis had better protect his body, or he's not going to last until the Titans hit the midway point of the season. Gosh, and Mark Sanchez, who I don't like, did a nice job commenting on it on Fox during the game. It's not sustainable. You can't take that many hits. He was just throwing his body around out there and getting abused. You don't want to do that against these large mammals. You will pay for that one, my friend. The Bears were 2 of 13 on third down today, man. That's just, it was rough. Let me put the glasses on and go to some of the numbers. And by the way, Darrell Taylor had a pair of sacks today. He's an ex-Seahawk. He had 7 solos. You're probably wondering, who the hell is 52 out there for Chicago? That was Darrell Taylor, and he led him in sacks today. He had 2. And Billings had some good pressures. Sweat almost got there a few times, but the Bears did. They really set up that blitz of Levis nicely on the eventual Farvarian pass that was taken into the end zone by Tyreek Stevenson. All right, I'm looking at individuals. I wanted to go to team to get you some ideas on some of the team stats. 2 of 13 were the Bears today on third down. Now, Tennessee was every bit as bad. They were 3 out of 14, 1 out of 2 on fourth down. The Bears did make both of their fourth down conversion attempts, and also Caleb Williams hitting Swift for the 2-point conversion. That was a nice play. Tennessee had the ball for 35 minutes. Sunday in this one, the Bears penalties, got to clean that up a little bit. They had 7 of them for 55 yards. I don't like the delay of game. You never do. Pre-snap penalties. Braxton Jones had one today. You hate to see that, but not a terribly unclean game, especially when the special teams pick you up. That it seems like that compensates for a lot of other little things that go wrong when you get things done like they did on the special teams today. And man, Cairo Santos, I'm praising kickers. And Torrey Taylor, the Australian Thunderfoot, showing why he was on Ryan Poles' hit list. The punter from Iowa, because the ball, they didn't comment on how long this punt that was fielded at the 10. The Titans return man made a fair catch, and he was standing at his 10-yard line and waited forever. It was like he hit a 64-degree wedge over an oak tree just as high as he could. It took forever for that thing to come down. I'm looking forward to seeing Torrey Taylor work, but hopefully he won't be needed as much as he was today, because Caleb Williams in the offense was just Not what they were expecting, but the sloggy NFL will get better and their offense will get better. It's a win, man. It's a win, and they covered the spread. They did cover. I had them as a cover. I have them winning 11 games this year. Next up for the Bears, it's the Houston Texans, and that's next Sunday night. They have to go to Houston to play. I'm going to be visiting with John McClain, who is the legendary Houston sports writer who's all things NFL. And whenever the Texans get somebody who is Hall of Fame worthy, he is the city's representative who makes the case for that player in what is a flawed system, but nonetheless, it's the system they've been using in the NFL for some time now. Each NFL city has a sports writer, a steward, if you will, who makes the case for their town's Hall of Fame nominees, and he just got Andre Johnson. Well, he didn't get him in. Andre Johnson got himself in, but he was the sports writer who had to make the presentation to the other voters. It's a very small panel that votes on Pro Football's Hall of Fame. So John McClain will let us know what's going on with C.J. Stroud and Joe Mixon, who had a nice start to his Texans career in Week 1. We'll talk with him early next week. Actually, it's this week because it's Sunday. We're off and rolling. We'll preview Week 2 with John McClain. I want to thank Sam Michael. He is my executive producer. Adam Delavitt is the guy who makes it all go at the Bet Rivers Podcast Network. Randy Merkin takes care of all of my guests. And I want to thank Troy Mocker and Alex Pastor for everything they do with social media and research and development. And thank you for watching this post-game edition of the Danny Mac Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great start to your week. The Bears were winners, 24-17. The final over the Tennessee Titans. Sing Bear down and knock it down with a little Lou Malnati's. How'd you like to be Lou Malnati tonight with all that secret sauce? Thanks for listening. Bye.